My name is Joe. These are just opinions. I am Joepinionated. Today, on Joepinionated List, Movie Edition, Top 10 Best Films Directed by Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese is born in New York in November of 1942, and he is currently 80 years old, November 17th. Part of this group of directors that were coming up at the time, like Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, Brian De Palma, George Lucas. He's one of the greatest American directors of all time, if not the greatest. He's definitely in the conversation. He's teamed up quite a bit with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Harvey Keitel. Why not? They've never once failed when they've worked together. I've been obsessed with Kubrick my whole adult life, but when I make these lists, some of them are making me think that, maybe my favorites aren't my favorites. Scorsese is definitely one of those for me. He's got so many great movies. This guy, Martin Scorsese, has basically knocked it out of the park almost every single time. Top 10 Martin Scorsese movies. Number 10 is the sequel to The Hustler from 1986, starring Tom Cruise and Paul Newman in The Color of Money. This is just such a good, easy to watch movie. Paul Newman's such a great actor, honestly. And just the pool playing is exciting. The original The Hustler is such an exciting movie too, with Jackie Gleason and Paul Newman. Check out The Color of Money if you haven't seen it. It comes in for me at number 10 all-time Martin Scorsese films. At number 9 all-time Joepinionated List Martin Scorsese films from 2004, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Howard Hughes in The Aviator. This movie, I loved it. I was kind of surprised that it didn't get more attention, honestly. When I did finally sit down and watch it, I thought it was fantastic. And Leonardo DiCaprio really stood out, as he often does. Okay, at number 8 all-time Joepinionated List, greatest Martin Scorsese films from 1991, Cape Fear, starring Robert De Niro, Nick Nolte, Juliette Lewis, is that her name? Yes. I mentioned it in the Robert De Niro Joepinionated List for best Robert De Niro, not movies, but that was acting performances. So check that out. That's also on my channel. This sort of film noir thing going on with this old picture. It's really great. Check it out. Cape Fear. Okay, in 2002, Martin Scorsese directed or released a picture starring Cameron Diaz, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Daniel Day-Lewis. The story is The Gangs of New York. Martin Scorsese is a New York film guy. Loves his New York. Sure, why not do one about the origins of New York right around the time the country was just getting going. This is an incredible movie, and I got to be honest with you, my buddy recommended that I go back and watch it again because I wasn't giving it enough love, and that was a while back now. Because of that, I went back and watched it again and again and again. Daniel Day-Lewis in this movie, awesome. It's so good. That's the best part of it for me. Bill the Butcher is just such an evil dude. Academy Awards, schmords, every single one of these movies should have won Best Picture of its year. That's how good Martin Scorsese is, and that's how shit the Academy Awards are. Number 6, in 2005's Martin Scorsese film in the all-time top 10 greatest Martin Scorsese films, I'm going with The Departed. Another one my buddy Trist also told me to go back and watch was The Departed. He was just obsessed with it, and man, I'm glad I did. Same thing. Jack Nicholson, mob boss, just brutal. Cop infiltration of the mob. So many guys put in incredible performances in this movie. Number 6 all time, The Departed. Number 5 all-time Joepinionated List, greatest Martin Scorsese directed films. I'm going with Goodfellas. I know this one finishes number 1 on lots of lists. Yeah, good for those lists. Joepinionated List. I have this one ranked at number 5. Funny? Funny how? Do I amuse you? Listen, Joe Pesci, on point. Ray Liotta kills it. De Niro, Pretty good in this one. Start to finish, perfect mob movie. Perfect. Goodfellas at number 5. In 2013, Martin Scorsese directed my number 4 film, The Wolf of Wall Street. About Jordan Belfort, stockbroker guy, went from penny stocks and worked his way to the top, created this decadence and debauchery type of office in New York. Credit to Tracy Morgan for decadence and debauchery talk. Very rated R. Mom, I'd suggest you do not watch this one. Jonah Hill is so fucking funny in his show. Leonardo DiCaprio is phenomenal in this film. The scenes with the drugs and the quaaludes are just incredible. I think it should be higher on most people's lists. One of my very favorite all-time Leonardo DiCaprio movies too. Okay, number 3 all-time Martin Scorsese films directed from 1995, Casino. I like Casino more than Goodfellas. This is usually the debate amongst my friends anyways. I don't know if that's normal or not, but these are the kind of things we like to discuss after a couple of opinions, you know what I'm saying? It's longer, number 1, and Sharon Stone is awesome in it, which I forgot to mention in the De Niro countdown. Joe Pesci, you get more Joe Pesci. Don Rickles. The first time I watched this movie, me and my buddy Ian watched the second cassette before the first cassette, which is a classic no-no, but it still worked out. Like, we were still just like right into the movie right away. Like, holy shit, this movie starts fast. Made it to the end, we realized what we did when the credits started going up, and we're like, oh shit. And then we watched the first one, and then we proceeded to watch the second one again. It was that good. Great story, awesome show. I've watched it quite a few times. My wife loves it too. There's nothing without trust. Oh, and James Woods, number 2 all time, The Bronx Bowl, The Raging Bull. From 1980, Martin Scorsese's greatest movies of all time, 1980s, The Raging Bull. Co-starring Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci together. The true story of Jake LaMotta. De Niro's performance in this is arguably his greatest. I mean, it would be a number 1 on many lists. Joe Pesci is really underrated in this movie. It was watching this movie when I was like, I love Joe Pesci. I like everything he's ever done. And it was this movie that kind of made me realize that. I remember thinking that. I know my buddy Steve used to love this. I'm pretty sure he had the poster over his bed and stuff like that. Like, this is just what heroes are made of. Raging Bull, once again, masterclass in acting, Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci. And masterclass in directing, the number 2 all-time Joepinionated List Martin Scorsese film is Raging Bull. And in Siskel and Ebert's opinion, the greatest movie of the 80s. The greatest movie of the 90s, in their opinion, was Goodfellas. Number 1 all-time Joepinionated List Martin Scorsese films. 1976's Taxi Driver. Look at it, it's just perfectly shot, every single scene, number 1. The color, the way it looks, I'm pretty sure I got all kinds of attention for that. This was basically his breakthrough movie. This is after Mean Streets, but it's like, this is the one where everyone's like, holy shit, who's this Martin Scorsese guy? It's one of the most intense movies to this day. Robert De Niro talking to the mirror, you talking to me, like you've heard it a million times, you talking to me, you talking to me, but that scene inspired so many scenes in the future, and it's so realistic. How many times have you talked into the mirror, whatever? Harvey Keitel, Jodie Foster, Sybil Shepherd. It's such an original film. There's never anything like it before or since. It's Robert De Niro in its prime, and it's just incredible. So it's number 1 all-time Joepinionated List Martin Scorsese movies is Taxi Driver from 1976. So that wraps up the Joepinionated List for Martin Scorsese, top 10 movies. Like I said, there's also honorable mentions in the description below. So if you click on the playlist, it'll actually just play the trailers for all these movies. There's not as many great directors as there are great musicians. You know, there's just not. So you should know who Martin Scorsese is. If you don't, watch his films. The honorable mentions are things like Mean Streets, The Irishman, which is really great, Last Waltz, documentary about the band, their last show called The Last Waltz. And that's honestly got to be in my top 3 music documentaries ever. And it doesn't even make the list, and I love documentaries. But yeah, what am I going to teach you about Martin Scorsese? Absolutely go. So sorry, I'm a little low on facts and high on opinions. Big respect to one of the greatest directors, American directors of all time, Martin Scorsese.